Compliance and Real Estate Committee. Roll call, please.
Mayor Kumar,
Here.
Ms. Moss, Mr. Joyce, Ms. McCall, and Mayor Weiss.
Present.
We have 3 committee members present.
Great. We have one item on our agenda today. It's the Internal Audit Quarterly Report, preliminary review of the third quarter of 2022, and the good work that's been done by Tony and his team. I think you're going to make some opening comments and then turn it over today to Anthony and team.
That's correct, and thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson and Mayor Kumar, members of the Audit Committee, Ms. Birdsong Terry, members of the Executive Management Team, and those that may be listening in through live stream. We'll be presenting today in the activities of the third quarter Internal Audit Department, and I am going to turn this presentation over and it will be led by Anthony R. Ganem, our Audit Manager.
Thank you, Tony. All right. Good morning, members of the Audit Committee, Chairperson Kumar, General Manager Birdsong Terry, members of management, and all attendees, virtually or in person. My name is Anthony Ganem. I'm the Audit Manager with the Internal Audit Department, and I'll be walking you through our Audit Committee meeting presentation. We're going to follow a similar format to what we've done in the past. What you see in front of you is the committee agenda for today's meeting. We go through completed projects, projects in progress, update you on our continuous auditing progress, cover some special requests and emerging issues, introduce a slide on audit blitzes, go through external audit coordination, outstanding follow-up, give you an update on our audit management system upgrade progress and the progress on our external assessment, cover some other projects, and go through the training that we conducted this quarter. I'm going to start off with travel. As you know, travel is an ongoing review. Every quarter, we receive travel reimbursement reports from members of management. Travel is ramping up across the authority. We received quite a bit of volume of travel from both members of management as well as board members to attend several different conferences. As we always do, we follow our process, both internal and informing members of management when issues do arise. We reviewed 100% of the third quarter submissions for travel. Results were satisfactory with findings and recommendations, and there are no issues for board consideration. I'm going to cover one of the 2 Buy America audits that we completed this quarter. It's the vehicle purchase compressed natural gas, also known as CNG, through Gillig. Our objective, as stated above, it was authorized under an option contract to 2021-100 with Gillig for the purchase and delivery of up to 20 40-foot CNG coaches, including the training, special tooling, and spare parts. We completed the Buy America review required by the Federal Transit Administration. We did not find any issues. The results were satisfactory. There were findings and recommendations. There are no issues for board consideration. I do want to note this is the first exercise option on the CNG. We are expecting the board to seek a second option for 20 more vehicles at an upcoming meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Molly O'Donnell, our staff auditor, to cover the second Buy America project.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Kumar, General Manager Birdsong Terry, and members of the Audit Committee. The Board of Trustees authorized the purchase and delivery of a locomotive work car under contract 2021-089 with Geismar North America. We completed the applicable Buy America pre-award review that is required by the Federal Transit Administration. This included a site visit to Geismar North America's assembly location in Beaufort, North Carolina. Our results were satisfactory, and we issued the pre-award certificate. Subsequently, the procurement department issued notice to proceed, and there are no issues for board consideration. And I will turn it over to Laura Crawshaw to discuss the facility access key audit.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Kumar, General Manager, CEO Birdsong Terry, and members of the Audit Committee. First completed project I will talk about is the Facilities Access Keys Audit. The objective was to evaluate compliance with Administrative Procedure 53 Key Control. The scope was key issuance and return, lost or stolen keys, key watcher controls, high authority and restricted area keys, and the track switch key inventory. Our results were unsatisfactory due to a number of control issues with the software's reporting capabilities, but management is addressing those recommendations. An update for you, we revisited with management and received feedback addressing additional risks and issues identified, and we will issue a final report soon. The next project I will talk about is the cycle counting inventory parts audit, which was completed as a team effort between me and Molly O'Donnell. The objective was to evaluate the processes and controls supporting the 2021 cycle count program. The scope was asset value classification, cycle count sheet review, IT input controls, physical security controls, year-end reporting accuracy, and inventory evaluation. Our results were marginally unsatisfactory with findings and recommendations from management. And we have two issues for board consideration that I will detail on the next slide. The first issue is that the cycle count configuration is not working as designed. The maintenance management system is designed to classify inventory items into categories based on average usage and value. This will capture 80% of the inventory value over the year in the cycle count program. However, inconsistencies were reported in the control design versus what we observed. The underlying programming did not capture the correct classification of items weekly to complete the cycle count program over the year. Second issue is that the inventory valuation reporting is questioned. Due to the configuration error, the cycle counting program was only able to capture 46% of inventory items by value in 2021. We cannot provide assurance on the 2021 inventory balance of $20 million. Additionally, there exists a number of items with $0 value, which represent an unknown impact to the inventory balance. Management is currently addressing the configuration issue, and internal audit is meeting with management to discuss corrective actions, including a physical inventory.
So can you just explain exactly what that means? Are these like parts that are our buses that we just, we're not keeping track of them quite right?
So parts are in our maintenance management system, and the usage is tracked by how they're assigned to work orders. So based on that, there's an average monthly usage. So then that number is multiplied by its cost. And based on that multiplied value and some thresholds that are set by management, those items are classified A, B, C, D, E. And so each week in the cycle counting program, it pulls a certain number of items in each category, and A and B items are counted twice a year and C items are counted once a year. So over the entire year, the goal is to count 80% of the inventory with those classified items.
Okay.
If I could maybe just follow up, the last bullet there exists a number of inventory items with $0 value. You mean those are things that are in inventory but are assigned no value?
Yes, so they're in the maintenance management system with $0 value. That doesn't necessarily mean they have zero value for RTA. We just don't want to double account for them. So that might be things like engine rebuilds or parts for preventative maintenance that came in a kit that they took apart, things like that. Grant items as well.
But the system doesn't allocate any value?
Right.
Okay. Is that the way it's supposed to be? Or?
Thank you, Laura. The portions of that configuration are by design. So the grant purchases have a, they are not listed in the system as by value, but we still want to make sure that they're counted, okay? Rebuilds are sent out, it could be motor, it could be transmission, they're sent out to a contractor, or they're done in-house. So those do have a value, and, we're looking for management to, evaluate that and determine what that value is across those rebuild items. I think the real issue here is that we want to make sure that when the inventory is counted, in other words, what's the book to shelf? What's in the books, our financial management system, compared to what's on the shelf? So this program, this cycle counting program, is a control designed within the system to require our storekeepers to count parts on a regular basis. So if they're not counting all the parts, we want to make sure that we have that good book to shelf relationship. So we are working very closely with Raj's team, and there's been a decision to conduct a physical inventory at the end of this year so that we can kind of true up that balance. And if there are any root causes that we identify so this doesn't happen again, we're going to address them at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I don't remember this being an issue before. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting, but is this like the first time we're doing this because we have new software and that's how we're finding this, or?
It was just a
has this
very
been a problem?
detailed review that we did, Ms. Moss. So this issue likely has occurred over time, and I'm not saying that it's the priority or severity of it has been the same, but we've identified it and we're trying to address it at this point.
Got a quick question. Is this specific to a particular garage or a particular location, or is this across the board that the cycle counting is off?
It's across the board, Ms. Birdsong-Terry.
Okay. And then another question, and this might be getting in the weeds a little too much, so feel free to just say, but I know in previous experience, whenever counts were off or inventory might be different, you mentioned like a part kit, and that could be something that gets broken apart if you need to be able to pull this out of that to be able to address whatever issue. Is the evaluation in the physical inventory that's going to be done also including the sign-in, sign-out approvals or availability of mechanics to individually take parts out of the storeroom versus the clerk or the log? Because I know that typically kind of contributes to the mismatch, especially in the overnight hours. And this is just based on other experience, not to say we have that issue here, but usually, it's not that uncommon. Will that also be looked at?
I'll address your question with our inventory management system, and our manager is responsible for supply chain management. All movements of inventory are tracked in the system. So in your example of when we buy a kit, it has many parts, and perhaps all the parts aren't used, those parts are returned to inventory in a stock return and added back to the count and valuation.
Okay.
So at this point, we want to validate that our book to shelf is trued up, and that's the reason for the physical inventory count. And we haven't had a physical inventory since 2011.
Yeah.
So this is, we've relied on this system to maintain this balance and valuation.
Going forward, it's something to think about, and I'm sure you have. Is there a recommendation for how often that physical count will be done so that we don't get into that decade-long or more of?
I think what we want to do is to make sure that we have a rebalance, and then it all depends on the control risk. So if controls are in place and working effectively, and we can identify root causes and address them, then perhaps management can rely on this cycle counting module within the maintenance management system. And if we feel that the risk deserves a physical inventory, it could be addressed on an annual basis.
Okay. I definitely like the idea of even a random, within a 4 or 5 year cycle to be able to do a physical count, because you never know. Sometimes management changes, employees change, supervision as well.
So Tony, based on the outcome of that physical inventory, are you gonna look at those items and compare it back to the cycle count to try and resolve with Raj's team why it's not working as prescribed? Because if you can figure that part out, then it'll be more reliable, and then you can, spread out your physical inventories.
Mayor Kumar, that is the primary objective.
Okay.
Thank you. Who's our next speaker? Darren Garlock is our next presenter.
Thank you, Tony. Good afternoon, Audit Chair Kumar, members of the Audit Committee, General Manager India Birdsong Terry.
That's a long one. India's fine.
You forgot L.
Right. The handling of cash is a high-risk function, and at GCRTA, we identified several locations that still collect cash. Locations where employees are required to accept, secure, and then remit cash to accounting. Of the 4 that we identified, we performed a controls review to follow the cash from point of collection to deposit, and our results were satisfactory, and there are no issues for board consideration. And now I'm going to transition to projects that are currently in progress. So this is the tool and shoe allowance, which are part of the ATU contract. And our objective was to review compliance with the terms of that agreement. Our scope was to validate all tool and shoe payments in 2021. And we are now in the reporting phase. We have a draft report, and we will be scheduling an exit conference with management to discuss our findings. The Common Area Maintenance Agreement is an agreement between GCRTA and Tower City, currently Bedrock Real Estate, which allows our customers to use the common areas of Tower City to access the rapid station and the gateway accessway. The objective of this audit was to identify the requirements of the agreement and to validate compliance with those terms. For the scope, we reviewed payment history, invoice accuracy, utility billing, and reimbursable expenses. We have met with GCRTA management to share our initial findings, and we'll be scheduling a meeting with Bedrock to answer some outstanding questions to be able to complete our field work. The contents of the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan are subject to audit on a 3-year cycle, and so we are currently conducting an audit of accident notification and investigation. Our objective is to ensure compliance with FTA regulations, SSO guidance, and Administrative Procedure 002, which is the revenue vehicle, which deals with revenue vehicle accidents. The scope includes compliance with FTA standards and GCRTA SOPs, accident reporting, response, and investigations. And we are currently in the fieldwork phase. And now I'd like to reintroduce Laura Crawshaw, who is going to discuss her projects in progress.
So the first project in progress I will discuss is an audit of the drug and alcohol program. This is also part of the 3-year Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan review cycle. The objective is to evaluate GCRTA drug and alcohol program adherence to federal regulations and FTA guidance. Scope is to evaluate PTASP compliance with ODOT and FTA checklists for content as it relates to the drug and alcohol programs. The FTA also completed their planned audit of the drug and alcohol program on October 5th. The audit team provided RTA management with an exceptions-based audit report that detailed their findings. It was overall a very positive audit of the program, and our department will be completing remaining items out of scope for FTA, but within scope for state safety oversight requirements. Next project in progress is an audit of the employee separation process. Our objective is to define the current process, evaluate its controls, and identify process improvement areas. The scope is an employee release form asset tracking, IT access termination, payout and arrears calculation, pre-termination hearings, and timeliness of processing. We will engage management in an exit conference soon and release our final report following their feedback. Next project in progress I have is the paratransit vehicle purchase with Western Reserve Coach. This is a purchase of 20 vehicles. The Board of Trustees authorized the purchase under Contract 2022-103 with Western Reserve Coach Sales, Inc. for the purchase and delivery of up to 20 Western Reserve Diamond paratransit coaches. Audit staff will complete the applicable Buy America review, which is required by the FTA. As of yesterday, we received all documentation from the vendor, so our pre-award review will be complete soon. Next, I have an audit of our Fair Media ticket stock contract. The objective is to review the contract, identify compliance obligations and risks to management objectives, and to document controls and evaluate compliance with the contract. The scope is our pre-printed ticket stock inventory, blank ticket stock inventory, fare card testing, fair media destruction, and contract invoicing. We are currently in the fieldwork stage of this audit. Now I will reintroduce Molly O'Donnell to talk about her projects in progress.
The first project I have to discuss is the Revenue Generating Services project. Our objective for this audit was to evaluate contract compliance for all revenue generating contracts and to validate the revenue streams for each contract. This included 2 contracts with Lamar Transit for on-vehicle advertising, in-station advertising, and advertising at bus shelters, as well as our vending contract with Pepsi. Our scope for testing included advertising revenue payments, the veracity of sales reports provided by Lamar and Pepsi, and benchmarking of the revenue share provided by Lamar and our advertising guidelines. We completed a draft report for this audit, and we will engage management in an exit conference and release the final report following the receipt of their feedback.
Molly, got a quick question for you. Oh, and I see I'll wait to the next one because you've got advertising too. Okay.
The next project I have to discuss was our advertising services project. Our objective for this project was to evaluate the contract compliance with the scope of services and invoice requirements for our contract for advertising agency services with Brokaw Inc. Our scope for testing included a review of invoices, a review of the monitoring of the contract spend, and campaign key performance indicators. We also completed a draft report for this audit, and like the last one, we will engage management in an exit conference and release the final report after we receive their feedback.
Just a quick question. So I know that the advertising kind of realm, we've dealt with the same contractors for a really long time. I would imagine, I don't know Lamar's offhand, but I know Brokaw's been a while. I'd imagine Lamar corner the market as well. You only have a handful of transit-specific advertisers out there, and there's a few more that are starting to engage. Have we audited this area before? Maybe this is more historical. Did we ever have any issues with the marketing sort of contract? Are there certain things that we know to look for? The reason that I asked too is because we had a pretty robust procurement process with the advertising folks, and I know one is upcoming, I think, on the Lamar side at some point. So just curious as to, are there any things that we're targeting or looking at to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck by the company we have?
We have audited both contracts in the past, And some of those contract terms were, 5-year terms. So in the Lamar case, we had not audited during this particular 5-year period, which I think is just ending, correct, Molly? Is it, the term is coming to term?
The Lamar contracts are set to expire 12/31.
12/31.
We are in process negotiation with procurement for an extension of that because the advertising guidelines are being rewritten, reevaluated with external counsel in conjunction with internal counsel. So we will extend that contract.
So, one of the things is a, contract closeout, when we're closing out, making sure that, contract compliance was achieved. So primarily, that's why it was selected. In terms of the advertising contract with and we did not have issues in the past. There were some issues in terms of the market conditions where they weren't able to provide us with some guaranteed revenue, but through change order processes, those revenues were reduced, approved and reduced, but they met all those obligations. In terms of the agency contract, we did have this is the first year of I believe a 1-year contract with two 1-year options. So really, it was kind of a closeout of the previous contract. And then the thinking here was that we have a new deputy general manager and to try to work through a closeout of old items and then provide more or less a clean slate with the new contract. That was primarily why we selected this for audit. But we did not have any identified issues in the past with this contract either.
The last project I have to discuss is our employee hiring practices project. Our objective for this project is to document and understand the current recruitment process, evaluate any bottlenecks in the recruitment process, consider compliance with applicable laws and regulations, and learn how candidates perceive RTA during the process. Our scope for this project is moving it towards being a consulting engagement to review the efficacy and efficiency of GCRTA's hiring process, and we are currently in the planning and risk assessment phase for this project. I will turn it over to Steven Zimmerman to discuss the motor overhaul project.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Kumar, members of the Audit Committee, and General Manager CEO Birdsong Terry. Internal Audit continues to be engaged in the motor overhaul contract audit with Swigger Coil Systems. Management continues to receive overhauled motors from the contractor and install them on heavy rail vehicles. Management also has been obtaining updates from the line voltage analysis to identify if there had been any impacts to the motors due to the overhead, and at this time they do not believe that the overhead has caused the smoky motors. So likely it has been due to the lack of time between overhaul since the last time that the motors had been serviced. Internal Audit will continue to monitor the situation as the motors continue to be installed on the new vehicles. We're also still engaged in the railcar vehicle replacement procurement. The procurement is still in negotiations with the preferred vendor. To remind you, Internal Audit is serving on the RFP panel as non-voting members, and when the procurement is ready to proceed to the board for award, we will also conduct our pre-award requirements, as is our usual standard. I will now turn over to Andrew Scott, our IT auditor.
Good afternoon, Chair Kumar, members of the Audit Committee, and GM Birdsong Terry. We wanted to provide a brief update on the Trans-Police Body Camera project. So the objective of the project is to evaluate the project for effective implementation of the technology. And the scope includes staying in compliance with contracts, RTA policies, record retention schedules, data plans, and then processes in the chain of custody for information transfers, such as public records requests. The primary update we have is that due to the restructuring of responsibilities within the Transit Police Department, as well as an expanded scope of the project to include dash cams to integrate with the body cams, we are also expanding the scope of our audit. So those will be upcoming updates in future meetings as well. I'll turn it over to Randy Bowles, who will discuss our continuous audit program, in which we utilize a series of scripts to interrogate data from various resources and produce us some good results.
Good afternoon, Mayor Kumar, members of the Audit Committee, and General Manager Birdsong Terry. The purpose of revenue collection is just to provide some assurance that all the fares are collected, reconciled, and posted and deposited to the bank. And everything with that went as expected, with some minor immaterial differences due to machine totals. The next one is purchasing card, and the purpose of that is just to procure goods and services in a timely and efficient manner, but we want that to be done in compliance with GCRTA policy. In addition to what's listed up here, we are going to be providing a quarterly report for management, in addition to the one we do, a monthly report for management, not a quarterly report. We're going to be providing that just to provide an additional level of assurance, that we're compliant to the policy, because they have a better idea of what to look for than we might do. So that makes it a little easier, for them to do their job and to make sure that we stay compliant. And another thing that's related to purchasing is Amazon. We are going to be doing the exact same thing for Amazon, because they take up 20% of those purchasing card purchases, and we do receive similar data from them. So that's currently in the works. Next, we got payroll. The purpose of that is to evaluate payroll data from the GCRTA ERP system. This is something that's relatively new, and we're now in the final stages of development, where we're going through our risk tolerance on some of the parameters. And I have another slide after this one where I'll go through some of the parameters. And we expect a full report next month, that's for this month. And some of the payroll tests that we have are new and terminated employees, suspicious excessive deductions, excessive work hours, et cetera. What we're currently working on is how we're going to determine, kind of where a cutoff is. For example, excessive work hours. I'm not sure what's, considered excessive. So we're going to sit down as a team and with the payroll management to kind of determine where to set these parameters, on things to actually investigate a little further.
Before we go to,
Excuse me. The question I would have is I remember that there was a specific instance of an employee, I think maybe he was on leave of absence and continued to get paid. And would this be something that would be caught in this kind of audit?
It would be something that if they got some type of excessive pay, depending on how we set the parameters, yes, it would catch it.
But this was, okay, I think that Tony knows specifically what I'm talking about.
Ms. Moss, to answer your question, that particular incident was related to a flagging issue in our human resources information system. It was a missed flag. It was an isolated one-off issue. So this particular script may or may not catch that. That we have other alternative tests that we do, but that was a one-off issue and isolated.
Okay, thank you.
I also had a question, and I'm not sure whether it's Tony or India. Remind me, we have GCRTA employees, some that are working at home Or are we fully back in office? I guess is the first question, and then I'll have a follow-up depending on what your answer is.
So we are back to work as an agency. We've had a incremental process back to work through the pandemic where we were, say, 3 days off, not off, but 3 days out, 2 days in, and then we bumped it up and bumped it up again. So the expectation is at the current moment, if you are able to do your job at home, that is not a consideration due to the pandemic. It would have to be some other illness. It would have to be a accommodation that would be approved through OEO to be able to allow someone to work remotely. We no longer accommodate work from home due to pandemic, if that's the question that you got. Yeah, one by one case that goes through the OEO evaluation in consultation with the supervising manager as well as the deputy general manager if it reaches that, and if needed, it reaches my office as the the civil rights officer through OEO.
Yeah, I was going towards the whole issue of withholding for people that are more than 21 days at home and so forth. But it sounds like our policy, the general policy is everyone's in the office unless you have good reason not to be. Okay.
You know, I wanted to clarify this particular payroll script. That's, again, something that's new and something that we're putting into place as part of our continuous auditing. We're going to run this script on a biweekly basis. You know, every other pay period, you know, we have the management cycle, and then there's the bargaining cycle payroll that's run. So the script is deemed to address issues that are, you know, this is the largest expense line item on our profit and loss statement. And, you know, we want to be able to provide some assurance that some of the controls in place are working. There's an interface between our human resources department and our payroll unit within our accounting department. So these tests are designed to identify some potential risk factors that we can then share with, you know, Raj and his group as we learn about them.
Thank you.
All right, nepotism. The purpose of that is to ensure our hiring and supervision practices are compliant with Ohio law and GCRTA policy. And from a continuous auditing, you know, aspect, you know, we take several different databases and try to aggregate them together. You know, for example, like the active employee database. In some cases, someone may self-report that information. We aggregate that as well, and anyone that was flagged before, and, you know, a few other databases I'm not going to try to go into too much detail on, but we aggregate all this information and we produce a database that has all the reporting relationships, you know, throughout RTA, and then we share that with management. And I think we have a meeting later this month with management to discuss our findings on this.
Excuse me, do we have a duty to report? Do our employees have is that part of their obligation to self-report if they're in a situation of nepotism?
Ms. Moss, the RTA has this issue covered in both our code of ethics, code of conduct, code of ethics, as well as our personnel policies and procedures. So there is a duty for our employees to provide this information. There are several ways to do that. First of all, upon pre-employment, to include it in their application. And then on an ongoing basis, as part of the healthcare enrollment every year, another opportunity to self-report. And then just to inform their supervisor, you know, per our personnel policies.
And is there a consequence for failing to self-report?
Yes, there is. It falls within our Code of Conduct and Positive Discipline program.
Thank you.
All right, my last slide, paratransit. This just certifies that eligible applicants are utilizing our services. So we take information that we receive from the Ohio Department of Health and Vital Statistics, along with, you know, our ridership database. You know, we kind of aggregate that information together, and we just flag potential applicants that should be considered for deactivation. And this list was provided to management recently, and we are currently awaiting their feedback. And that's all I have. I will bring up Anthony Ganem.
I had one question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got one more slide here.
Go ahead, you can finish that off.
Oh, this is just a list of our current and forthcoming schedules and the periods we're doing, some monthly, quarterly, and annually. And then we have the ones that are coming up, fuel expenses, accounts payable, and accounts receivable. And I would sort of add Amazon to this list as well. It's kind of related to purchasing, but we're going to separate that one out and treat it differently.
Thank you. Your first closed project, you don't have to go back in the slides, but that was on was that on the hard card stock for tickets? Was that?
I'm trying to understand your question, Mayor Kumar. On our first,
The mobile, was that the mobile ticketing?
okay, on the ticket stock?
Yeah.
Okay, that particular project's still in fieldwork phase, but that addresses the pre-printed fare media. So in other words, the fare cards you can buy at our sales agents and customer service center
Right.
have a significant value maintained in our revenue vaults, as well as the blank ticket stock that's used to go into our fare boxes where the fare is printed on those tickets as they receive cash into those fare boxes. So we want to make sure that there's controls in place for safeguarding those prepaid, pre-printed cards, and then also on the blank ticket stock, so it's controlled as well.
And then as we move to apps and things like that, how do you have any concerns from an internal audit standpoint of scripts that we would need to do to make?
On the apps, we've actually started that particular audit. So our IT auditor, Andrew Scott, has developed an audit of both the configuration, the input controls, and process controls, and output controls. Let me spell it out. Configuration is the setup. Who has access to change things? Who has access to get reports, okay? Input controls are the, if you're going to, if something costs a certain amount of money, a particular fare, that it's set up for that, all right? So it's the setup of those particular types of fares. If an all-day pass costs $5, does it work for $5? To specifically answer your question about auditing in the field, the authority is purchasing and installing validators, in our vehicles, and then experimenting with some interfaces with our fare gates at Tower City. So as those validators are installed, we are going to be testing the validation of those mobile app processes. So does a decrement, does a 7-day pass go down to 6 days, down to 5 days? Does a monthly pass expire after 30 days or 31 days, whatever it's set for? So we're doing those kinds of tests with our mobile app.
Now I'd like to introduce Anthony Ganem to talk about audit blitzes.
All right. As I mentioned in the original agenda slide, we're introducing audit blitzes as a part of our 2022 audit plan. We're in a position to actually attain our audit plan this year. So we've configured a blitz type of approach to the projects that you see up on the screen. These projects are designed to be completed in a 1 day or up to a 1 week period, covering all 3 phases, the fieldwork, planning, and reporting phase. We've identified these projects early in the year that were approved by board members. They are up on the screen. We have one currently in progress, the Tower City CSE, as well as the Customer Service Center, and we have 5 additional ones that are in planning. We will provide an update on the completion of these at the next audit committee meeting. These will be completed prior to the next approved board agenda audit plan for 2023. So between now and February, March of 2023, all of these will be expected to be completed. Next.
Oh, sorry, just a quick question, and this could be, I don't know who, I think it was maybe Laura or Molly who had it. just to piggyback on the pre-printed fair media or just card stock in general, I know that there had been a recent concern that maybe the card stock was getting stuck. I know it's more operational than anything. Is the kind of quality of the card stock and how it's effective for us, is that also a part of the evaluation? Because that could be a lot of things with changes in, card stock swelling with the weather and all of that, but we want to make sure that we're getting, our money's worth on that regard too.
I can say this, Ms. Birdsong-Terry, is that the preventative maintenance and maintenance folks in our electronic repair group, they utilize the data produced by the equipment themselves, how many cycles, how many transactions to bring those pieces of equipment in, replace parts, do preventative maintenance on parts to try to minimize where these tickets are jammed and or misprinting and so forth. And that used to be more of an issue before our folks took that process over. And they have a pretty robust maintenance program in place. And we have a number, in fact, many spare units because of the reduction in the size of the fleet. When we purchased the fare boxes, we bought many more. So parts is not an issue. We have the skilled technicians, and they do a very good job of that maintenance.
Just a technical question. The blitz refers to what exactly? Help me out.
Our approach is going to be collaborative on these audits. Okay. So, similar to a football terminology, when you blitz, several people attack the quarterback. We won't actually be attacking anybody. It'll just be a group effort to complete some of these audits, as a lot of them have to do with fair media count, revenue counts, or tasks that involve multiple people at once.
Okay, but it's not a more limited scope. It's just how it's being.
The scope is defined for each of these. So next committee meeting will provide you all of the details so you can kind of get an idea of what an audit blitz would look like.
I think it's probably you take personnel so you can complete something quicker. So you might, instead of working on a lot of different projects, they might take a whole team and say, let's focus on this and knock it out this week. Probably resource allocation.
That's exactly what it is, Mayor Kumar. Instead of having one person assigned where it may take someone, 2 months or 3 months to complete work, it's an all-hands-on-deck approach to try to address. They are smaller scopes of work. And I'll give you an example. The healthcare dependent eligibility. We have, when a new employee arrives, they have to provide for their dependents a birth certificate, a marriage license, a court order. So we want to make sure those personnel files are updated so that the authority is only paying for healthcare benefits for qualified and eligible people. So, we'll take our staff, in a week's time, we can blitz those personnel files and measure compliance. So it's a smaller scope with a lot more resources.
Great, thank you.
Good. Okay, I'll introduce Tony to. I'm sorry. We have our Molly O'Donnell, our staff auditor, will discuss the next slide on our third-party telecommunications and data services from a previous presentation.
The Director of Procurement previously requested an audit to evaluate the invoices for GCRTA's telecommunications and data services on a contract with AT&T. We presented the issues for board consideration at a previous meeting, but we wanted to provide an update. And our update is that after presenting the issues to management, they provided the update that the change order ratification is scheduled for November 2022.
Thank you, Molly. This next section of our report has to do with our function as the Office of Inspector General for the authority, where we do receive some special requests, and sometimes we will do an investigation where there's potential fraud, waste, and abuse. So moving forward, we did complete a review based upon a tip of nepotism, overtime, and some work order issues. We met with management briefly. We're still meeting with management. We've identified some issues and very confident that management will address them. And when field work is complete, we will issue this, I'm sorry, when the report is issued, it has been issued, when we receive management feedback, we will release this report, and we can talk about it a little bit more at the next meeting. These next three issues were brought to our attention, again, through tips to our fraud hotline. We have one on incompatible employment, which is a issue, a violation of our code of ethics, potentially. Onboard revenue collection, of potential fraud, waste, and abuse, and distribution of some operator payroll checks that were a mass distribution, and a couple of employees didn't receive checks, and checks were missing, checks were reissued. So we're working with our transit police on that particular investigation. Again, we'll provide more information when these reports are released and we have met with management. Rounding out our report, getting to the end here, is our responsibility to coordinate with our external auditors. And as the board knows, the state auditor met in June, and report was issued in July on the fiscal year 2021 single audit, the financial audit. And the auditor state's going to do that work again in 2022, and they should be on site at some point in November to begin some of their preliminary work. Usually it's with their IT group, their information technology group.
Tony, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So, a long time ago, we used to hire our own external audit, and then there was some issues, and the state started to come in every year, and it's been a lot of years now. Do you think they just love to come to our place because we're like a half a block from their office, or do you think they'll ever like move on, or are they here for the duration?
This is certainly my opinion, okay? But the Ohio Revised Code 11711 provides that the auditor state will do an audit every year because we meet a threshold of receiving federal grants. We're over that threshold by a lot. And it's their decision in terms of, do they want to do it themselves, or do they want to subcontract out? And they'll certainly engage our, Raj and our people. And then we've had that whole gamut in the past, as you've indicated. We've had some of the larger firms, some of the mid-sized firms. We had some local firms that did it. For the past, I want to say 5 to 8 years, perhaps, maybe.
Since 2013.
2013, the state auditor has taken it on themselves. Now, in my opinion, I think we're a conservative organization. We've had very good reports, and for that reason, I think it's a nice audit for them to keep. Just my opinion.
Tony, if I may, going back to your comment about the Ohio Revised Code, by law, it's the auditor of state that is responsible for conducting audits of public entities. And as Tony Garofoli did indicate, it is their prerogative to determine whether they want to do it themselves or outsource it to a third party. But even when they outsource it, it becomes a three-party transaction to which they are part of the panel and will eventually review the work papers before the audit report is released. That is correct.
And it's not unusual, like for our city, that the state will do it, but then they sometimes contract out for a few years for an independent third-party CPA with some oversight, depending on what they do, but every once in a while, they still want to cycle back in.
Of course.
They will look at, I think, all their organizations are required to audit and probably go through their materiality and comfort with how they want to allocate their resources.
Right.
And we're
Exactly, and I
football
think
field
at their June presentation, they often do make that comment that they would look at their workload and then determine whether they would be undergoing and taking on the responsibility of conducting the audit for the following year, or if something else needs to be done. And since Tony expressed an opinion, I may as well go ahead. I think we make their life very, very simple. They will want to continue doing it.
Okay, continuing with this external audit coordination, as Laura said, the FTA came in, did the third-party review of our drug and alcohol program. And then finally here, the state safety oversight through the Ohio Department of Transportation. They are bringing in lessons learned from other properties, and then they are sharing some special directives with all transit properties to take a look at what's happening at your place, in other words, our place, in terms of risk monitoring and so forth. Our safety department's doing a very good job there, though, in working with those special directives. Status of outstanding follow-up. If we do an audit and we issue a recommendation, we're going to be putting it on our issue log and tracking it until closure. Working closely with management and getting their status updates. When they implement something, we go back out and test it, and then we'll close it, if it deems closed. Now I wanted to break away a little bit from the third quarter report and give you an update on some of the other issues or projects that we're working on. I'll start with this quality assurance external assessment. And as I said in the last quarterly update to the committee, we completed a self-assessment. This is in accordance with our professional standards, Institute of Internal Auditors. And we are in the process, are engaged with Mayor Kumar, Raj, our Director of Procurement, Melinda D'Angelo, and then some help from our legal department. We are engaged in a confidential procurement to secure or hire an independent validator to review our self-assessment. We are in the final stages of that particular procurement, and then we'll have that special assessment in. On my table there is the Blue Book, which is the Quality Assurance External Assessment Guide. They will use the same guide that we use to do the self-assessment. We'll provide to them our information, they'll review it, and then they'll also provide to us some good benchmarking information or some suggestions for improvement based upon the best practices of their other places that do the assessment. And I'll let Mayor Kumar say something if he chooses.
No, I think we're just, working our way through it and had several proposals, I think some good options, and we're just trying to wrap up that process. I know the board was interested in moving this with some purpose so we could wrap it up. Not sure we might make the end of the year, but if it rolls over into January, we fully intend to have an update at the audit committee meeting in February, just based on timing with the holidays. But I think we're still working through that with Melinda's been great, and Raj and Tony to work as a good collaborative team.
I think I'm sorry, did someone say something?
The self-assessment is completed, though.
We completed the self-assessment in July. We reported out to the board in August. We issued a report. So we have that report and all the supporting information to share with the independent validator, which is their scope of service. And I think a good point that was made is that as we head into the 2023 audit year, lessons learned from the self-assessment or the benchmarking or information we might receive from this firm, we can integrate into our best practices as we move forward into 2023.
I think the idea is we will have probably a draft report that we can look at. And so something that Tony can look at, they do produce some points if there's some opportunities from what they've seen with other clients, some things that we may implement, maybe improve an already good system. That's something, again, Tony and team can build into his system. And I think we also have told them that we would like them to present in person to the full audit committee so that you all have a chance to get your questions answered.
Okay. Other projects? We are very excited about our new audit management computer system. This is replacing a system that's a little outdated. It's about 18 years old, and we were informed it's going to be out of support. We are now we're on the verge of go live this month with a state-of-the-art system, and it's designed to help us conform to our professional standards. And we'll utilize the system for risk assessment, for resource planning, for audit assignments, working paper capture, issue tracking. So it's, like I say, a robust system, and we're looking forward to its rollout. To date, our staff has been fully trained. We've had manager training, we've had champion training to configure it, and end user training. So again, very excited to have this project completed this year and moving forward. Other projects that are worth mentioning is that, as the board was informed, we are on the verge of transitioning from a long-time relationship with Medical Mutual of Ohio to Anthem. And there's a closeout process there with claims processing, claims incurred but not paid, and invoicing. So we are going to be working with an audit consultant, a healthcare audit consultant, to ensure that a smooth transition takes place and that we can recover any overspend. These other projects are merely some steering committees and other committees that we are involved in to share some of our broad knowledge and experience. And we appreciate that invite from management. We'll continue to participate in these types of committees. My last slide is just on staff training that we had during the third quarter. And we are very active in our local chapters, the Institute of Internal Auditors, the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, the Information Systems Auditors. We try to stay very active when there's some local training that's available. We always take advantage of it, and we try to keep a broad approach to our training with staff. We also met our goal. As you know, we have a number of new staff auditors, and they all have traveled to, a week-long, sponsored by the Institute of Internal Auditors, Tools for the New Auditor. It was a goal that we had, for this year, and we've achieved that goal. And that rounds out our training for the third quarter. So with that, ends my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I only have a comment. I know this is an extra, I don't want to say burden, but extra responsibility for us all and the audit committee. But I have to say that this has almost been going on for a year. This format, I think, is a year. And I think it's great that we get to see the audit staff, and you all did a really great job. And we know you work hard, and we appreciate your hard work, and it's good to see you present it. And I like the configuration, and I'm glad this is all working out really well. And good meeting.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good opportunity, and just like when we get this report back, just a chance for you all to engage with the firm that's selected and sort of some touch points through the year. I think it just makes the whole committee a little more productive and informed.
May I have a final say here? As part of the external assessment, this validator is going to come in, and they're going to want to interview members of the executive management team, perhaps some directors that we do a lot of work with, and certainly some of the audit committee members and maybe some board members. So I think this format has helped us to share, more of what we do, and that you can understand a little bit about the profession and about the internal audit standards. So, you should look forward to the assessor reaching out to some of you to answer some of their surveys.
Very good point.
Thank you.
Sure.
And thank you to my staff.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Nice job.
Yeah, and I want to echo Ms. Moss's comments. Great job in presenting everyone, and it's great to put faces and names together, so we really appreciate that. Any other items from the committee?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.